What's up, guys? It's Wally, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 Paradox Pokemon you should be using in VGC. And not just in Series 2 either, because I feel like even in future series, especially once Koraidon and Miraidon are introduced in the VGC scene, I feel like these Paradox Pokemon might become even more prevalent. And not just that, but when you look at their stats, all of their base stat totals are either 570 or 590. And that's like right in the range of like Pokemon like Tornadus, Landorus, and Pokemon like that. So feel like these guys won't be going anywhere. So we'll get into this list, but before we do, as always, if you guys are new here, just haven't yet, please make sure to go down and hit the subscribe button. If you guys do enjoy the video, please make sure to drop a like too. But let's get into this list. We start off with the Amoonguss Paradox Pokemon Bonnet. Now, its typing isn't the greatest as a Grass and Dark-type Pokemon, since you do have 7 weaknesses, including a 4x weakness to Bug. However, it does come with 6 resistances and 1 immunity. But if you are really worried about all the weaknesses, don't forget that terrestrialization exists. So you could end up going with something like Water, as you typically do with Amoonguss. However, since Bonnet does have the weakness to Fairy as well, I really do kind of recommend going with something like Fire. That way you could end up resisting the Fairy moves too. All that aside, it is a really bulky Pokemon that ends up hitting really hard as a physical attacker. It has a 127 base attack stat, which is 17 points over Meowscarada. However, with less than half the speed, so that's the one downside to it. But with a 111 HP stat and a 99 base defense and special defense stat, it can take enough damage to stay on the field for some time. Plus, with high stats in its attack and bulk, it can work as both an attacker or a supporter. Now, as a supporter, it does have access to moves like Spore, as well as Taunt, and I believe Rage Powder as well, just like Amoonguss does. That way, if you want to use it as a redirector, you have that ability as well. Also, even though it isn't a special attacker, you could always put something like Clear Smog on it. That way you could always reset the stat changes that a Pokemon's taken. So that way it could end up being a really good counter for Dindozo, since you can end up using Clear Smog to clear all of its stat changes, as well as resisting a lot of the moves that Dindozo uses. Plus, with its naturally high attack stat, pairing a combination of those moves with stab moves like Sucker Punch or Seed Bomb would make it a really strong, bulky Pokemon. If you were to use it as an attacker, having access to moves like Sucker Punch, again, it is really great because something like Sucker Punch is a priority move, which is pretty strong, so it takes advantage of Bonnet's attack while ignoring its speed. Also, as I said, you have another strong Grass Stab move in Seed Bomb, or if you wanted to, you could always do something a little cheesy. You could end up putting a Loaded Dice on Bonnet, as well as putting something like Bullet Seed on it too. Now, I think that's a little cheesy, something that might be a little out of left field. So if you do want to go with something that may be a little more traditional, putting Sucker Punch, Seed Bomb, Spore, and maybe even something like, of course you could always put Protect, but another strong move like maybe Close Combat would be really nice. Obviously, you wouldn't have the Loaded Dice on there. You can always put something like Leftovers because it is a really bulky Pokemon. I know that's kind of like a default item to put on it, but I think that'd be really good for Bonnet. You can always end up putting a Berry on it as well, but Leftovers is pretty nice too. When it comes to EV spread, of course you want to really take advantage of that HP stat at 111, so you really want to put the 252 up there. Again, if you are using it as an attacker, going 252 here as well I think would be really good. And also because, again, you are susceptible to Fairy-type moves, as well as Fire moves, and a lot of those are special attacks, maybe putting the 4 in special defense. Now, of course, it isn't a fast Pokemon, so if you are using it for a Trick Room, I definitely think that going with a Brave Nature would be a really good thing to do. But of course, if it isn't being used in a Trick Room setting, you could always end up going with an Adamant Pokemon. But again, if you are using it as a Trick Room Pokemon, going with the Brave Nature I think would be the best one to go with. But for all intents and purposes, Bonnet is truly just a stronger, bulkier, but faster Amoonguss with more weaknesses, but one that I think will be on a really good amount of teams. Next is the first future Paradox Pokemon on the list, and that's the Hariyama Paradox Iron Hands. Now, there are a lot of things to like about Iron Hands, but let's start with its typing. Fighting and Electric. So this combination only gives it 3 weaknesses to Ground, Fairy, and Psychic, as well as 5 resistances, which really reduces the chance of getting hit by a strong, super effective move. And that's especially great when you consider the next thing to love about Iron Hands. It's 154 base HP stat. Now, I don't care if you get hit with a super effective move. It's going to be really hard to take that thing down in one shot. Plus, with a 108 defense, it'll be really difficult for physical attackers to bring it down. I mean, it does have a 68 base special defense stat, which isn't great, but with such a high HP stat, it can really make up for that difference. I mean, if we end up putting 252 in HP, like we would probably do, especially for a Pokemon like Iron Hands with such a huge HP stat, its HP goes up to 261, and that is such a high stat. Again, that is going to be something that is going to be very difficult to take out in one turn. If you thought that bulk was great, wait till you hear about the 140 base attack stat. Yeah, this absolute tank hits like one too. And with fighting and electric stab moves like Close Combat, Drain Punch, as well as Wild Charge, and I believe Thunder Punch as well. Oh yeah, absolutely Thunder Punch as well. You'll be able to take down Water, Flying, Dark, and other types like that in a breeze. And I said that about Thunder Punch because the other great thing about its move pool is its inclusion of all punching moves. So as you see, we have Drain Punch, Fire Punch, Focus Punch, Ice Punch, Thunder Punch. Like, you have a lot of options here. Plus, you get so much coverage, including fairy moves like Play Rough. You get steel moves like Heavy Slam, as well as, I believe, Iron Head as well, of course. You have ground moves like Earthquake, and I believe Stomping Tantrum too, and so much more. So the sheer power of Iron Hands here, as well as its diverse move pool, is what makes it really good. And not just that, but just like Hariyama, it does have access to Fake Out as well. So that's something that you're definitely going to have on Iron Hands, just like you do on Hariyama too. I mean, if we were to build this Pokemon out, I mean, obviously we probably wouldn't keep this moveset right here, but for EVs at least, again, we really have to take advantage of that high attack and HP stat. I mean, I know going 252 might be a little cringe to some people, but again, for a Pokemon like Iron Hands that has a 154 HP and a 140 attack, it's hard to really not take advantage of that. And then, of course, you put the 4 in special defense as well because it does kind of lack in that stat. Of course, you could end up, if you feel like that attack stat is high enough, you could always remove some from the attack stat and put in the special defense stat if you really feel like that extra bulk in the special defense is more beneficial. And of course here, you want to go with something with a plus attack, again, taking advantage of that stat. Again, with this one, I would end up going Adamant, but just like Brute Bonnet, if you really are going to put it on a Trick Room team, going with a Brave Nature is probably the best way to go. But with Iron Hands, for me, I would probably end up going with an Adamant set just because, again, I'm not sure who I would end up pairing it with, but just for, again, all intents and purposes, we're going to go Adamant here. And in terms of a move set, I do think Close Combat's going to be really good. It is such a strong move. So I would take Close Combat over Drain Punch. I would definitely keep Wild Charge on there as well as Fake Out. And then you could have another move like Protect, or another coverage move like Play Rough, or again, any of the punches as well. Because if you do have a problem with some of the other Pokemon like a ground type, you could have Ice Punch to be able to take care of that. But for now, I think we're going to leave Protect on there. And as an item, again, because of its high attack stat, I think we really need to take advantage of that and take advantage of the ability Quark Drive, which on electric terrain, or if the booster energy, which is the item we're going to put on it, its highest stat, which in this case is going to be the attack stat, is going to increase by 30%. And that is really huge. So having something like booster energy on it, I think is going to be really beneficial to really take advantage of that attack stat. So having stats like this, as well as a nice move pool, and again, being able to use Quark Drive to be able to increase your attack stat, I think is the reason why Iron Hands comes in at number 4. And number 3, we have the Delibird Paradox Pokemon Iron Bundle. So for those of you who have been experimenting with Series 2 teams on Showdown, or even before Series 1 rules were released, you may have seen a lot of Iron Bundle next to a lot of other strong Pokemon, including another Pokemon on this list, but we'll get to that later, and for good reason too. So with a 136 speed stat, that is the 3rd highest in the game behind Dragapult and Electrode. But with booster energy or the electric terrain to trigger Quark Drive, its speed raises by 50%, and it becomes the fastest Pokemon on the field. And with access to moves like Icy Wind, which I know is something we'll definitely have on it, it acts as a great speed control Pokemon, so you can make it so your partner outspeeds the other team as well. Plus, with a 124 base special attack stat, and it being a stab move, that Icy Wind still hits really hard. And even if you wanted to bypass the Icy Wind and just use it as a strong attacker, you had that option too. It doesn't have the most diverse move pool, don't get me wrong, because you see, especially with the special attacks, there's just a lot of water, ice, some normal, and one flying move. But there are some really great moves in there too. I mean, you have access to Blizzard, which again is a 110 power, as well as Hydro Pump, which is a 110 power as well. I mean, you do have the issue with accuracy, but, you know, oh, what can you do? But not just that, but you also have Freeze Dry too, which is a really special move because it is an ice type. However, it is still super effective to water. So having that to counter water types is really nice. Also, I know from my friend True Will Tank that it can work really, really well as a water Terra type. This would give it a 2x stab boost on Hydro Pump, or if you're like me and miss half your Hydro Pumps, you could opt for Terra Blast for that, to be able to make sure that you don't have to worry about accuracy. However, if we're being completely honest here, I think Hydro Pump, despite the 80% accuracy, is definitely the better move here. And aside from these actual attacking moves, it does have access to other moves such as Aurora Veil, which is nice because it's basically like a Reflect and a Light Screen together. Plus, you do also have Snowscape and plenty of other helpful support moves. So if we were to use Iron Bundle, again, it would kind of actually be a hybrid of support and attack. So with a base 56 HP stat, I mean, we could definitely invest 252 in there if we feel like it, if we want to make sure that it's out there for some time. But again, with a high 124 special attack stat and a 136 speed stat, I feel like we really need to invest a lot in there because, especially with Iron Bundle, we really want to make sure it outspeeds things. So making sure that it's a timid Pokemon, I think, is really important here. I mean, of course, if you do want to make it a stronger special attacker, you can end up going Modest. But I feel like, again, it being a really fast Pokemon and having Icy Wind on it as well, making sure that it's the fastest Pokemon out on the field is going to be really important. And that's actually why I would actually put Booster Energy on it as well. And with the extra 4, I would probably end up putting it in Special Defense here. I know it's not a big change, but having that extra 4 in Special Defense is nice, especially since the defense is all the way up at 114, and that's a really nice defense stat. So again, we would have it as a timid Pokemon to make sure that it is max speed. We would definitely have Icy Wind on there, as well as instead of Blizzard, I would definitely put Freeze Dry just because you do have that super effective to water. So even though it's only 70 power compared to the 110 that you would have with Blizzard, which is also a spread move, I think being able to have that chance to freeze and be super effective to water is most important. So we'll Freeze Dry, Icy Wind, as well as Hydro Pump, and I think either Protect, or if we really feel like it, we could put Aurora Veil on it if we feel like it could be that type of support, especially since it's the fastest Pokemon on the field. However, I do think Protect is probably going to be better. So this strong, speedy, supporting, yet attacking Pokemon, Iron Bundle really is an incredible mix of speed, support, and special attack, and one that I'm sure you'll be seeing a lot of on the ladder. Next, we have a Pokemon that I know a lot of people are extremely excited to use, including myself, and that is Roaring Moon. Now this thing has the same typing as Hydreigon, Dragon and Dark, higher attack and speed than Garchomp, and it even has access to Dragon Dance. So when comparing it to its modern-day descendant Salamence, it has higher stats in every single category, with the exception of defense and special attack. I mean, thankfully, the defense discrepancy is only 9 points, and you wouldn't really want to run Roaring Moon as a special attacker anyways, so Roaring Moon really seems like the superior option. It has an absolutely insane attack stat at 139, and with such a deep and strong move pool, you can cover yourself for a lot of different typings. I mean, looking at only its physical attacks, I mean, look at all the different typings that are there. I mean, I ended up counting it out. Don't worry, I won't make you guys count it, but there are 13 different types of moves here in just the physical attacks, which means that depending on the Terra type it is and what role you really want it to fulfill on the team, it can really surprise an opponent with an unexpected move like Acrobatics or Iron Head. Also, as mentioned before, it does have access to Dragon Dance, and so this is nice if you want to increase your attack and speed by 1 stage. It even has access to Tailwind, which is nice if you do want to end up using it as your Tailwind setter, which is a really good possibility, but again, being able to use Dragon Dance and be able to set up, I think would probably be even better. So essentially, this Pokemon is a combination of all the good things from our favorite pseudo-legendary dragon Pokemon, but in a better package. So if we ended up wanting to do a build with this, now I know Booster Energy is, kind of like a normal thing to put on the Paradox Pokemon. I think that's great for Roaring Moon. The good thing is it does have Photosynthesis, which is nice because this ends up getting triggered by Sunny Day or anytime that the sun is out. So if you do have Torkoal on your team or another Pokemon that's able to set the sun, That's really nice to have because then you wouldn't need the booster energy. You can end up putting something like the Life Orb on it, which would be really nice because that would increase your damage by 30%. And again, with Roaring Moon being a strong physical attacker at 139, I think that'd be really incredible. But again, for all intents and purposes, we're going to put booster energy on it. I think looking at an EV spread, I mean, its HP is at 105, which is really nice. You definitely want to take advantage of that to be able to give it a little bit of bulk. I think like 212 would actually be really nice, getting it up to 207. We definitely want to max out its attack stat. I'm definitely going to make it adamant because, again, we don't need that special attack at all. The defense is a little low. Again, what I said at 71. So I think I'm going to add a little more bulk there. So I'm going to add 36 there. And then, of course, we do have 8 remaining. So we're going to put 4 in special defense and 4 in speed as well. So the 4 in speed because for some reason your opponent has a Roaring Moon as well. And they didn't invest anything in speed in it. Being able to put that 4 in there to get that 1 extra point is really nice because that means you're going to outspeed it. Plus, if you do have something like Dragon Dance, you are going to be able to increase your speed. So that 140 speed stat is going to increase even more. And then with an adamant Pokemon like this too, with a high attack stat, that Dragon Dance is going to do some serious work. Now, of course, other moves to put on it. Like I said, Acrobatics would be really cool if you wanted to make it a Flying Terra type, because with Booster Energy, that ends up getting used up right away. So that means Roaring Moon isn't going to be holding an item. So Acrobatics is really special because it is a 55 power move, which doesn't sound like a lot, and, truly it's not. But if you aren't holding an item, it ends up doing double the damage. So that 55 turns into 110. So Roaring Moon, again, with a really strong attack stat, having a 110 flying move, and again, if you end up terroring, that's going to be a stab move too. That's going to hit extremely hard. Aside from Dragon Dance, I feel like we really need to put a stab move on here. So I think the 2 choices that we kind of have are Dragon Claw, which is nice because, of course, it's a dragon move and it's really strong at 80 power. But we also do have Crunch, which is a dark move. It's 80 power as well, but you do have that extra chance of being able to lower your target's defense by 1 stage. And again, Roaring Moon being a physical attacker, that's only going to benefit it. So I think we're going to put Crunch on there. Roaring Moon does have a very glaring weakness to fairy types because it is a dragon and dark type. So we do have the option to tear it into a couple of different things. Of course, like I said, fire does resist fairy, as does steel. When I was looking at the fire moves, it looks like Fire Fang is really its only strong fire move. So of course we're not going to end up doing that. So we will end up tearing it, if we do tear it, into a steel type because it does have access, if I can find it here, to Iron Head. And having Iron Head on there, again, being able to make it a stab move and being able to make it be strong against Fairy, which is typically Roaring Moon's 4x weakness, I think is really beneficial. And then, of course, our last move that we're going to have on there is Protect. I know some people don't really like Protect, but for me, I think it's really important, especially if you want to be able to wait out something like Trick Room or something of that sort. So being able to have Protect on there, I think, is really important. So all things considered, Roaring Moon actually has a huge case to be number 1 on this list, but I really did have to place it at number 2. But it's definitely one that you're going to be seeing a lot of going forward. Now, before we get to number 1, I have a couple of honorable mentions because there are a lot of Paradox Pokemon and ones that I'm sure you'll be able to see and use on teams for yourself too. So just a couple here. The first one we're going to talk about is Screamtail. Now, this is one I'm sure you guys are going to see on a good amount of teams. Not just because of its resemblance to Jigglypuff, but aside from that, it is a really bulky Pokemon with a good amount of speed too. I mean, speed is at 111, the HP and special defense at 115, and even its defense is at 99. So it's a really, really bulky Pokemon. I mean, its attack and special attack are at 65, but truly, that's not what you're going to be using it for. And if we're being honest here, this thing is an incredible, incredible Trick Room setter. So its diverse status move pool, natural bulk, and ability to set Trick Room make it an ideal choice as a Trick Room setter or support Pokemon. And our second honorable mention, we have Iron Valiant. Now this one is kind of a sleeper pick here, and I think I've seen a couple other people starting to use it as well. And I think it could have a lot of great uses too. I mean, it does have a good amount of speed at 116, as well as a base attack and special attack stats at 130 and 120 respectively, which make it so that you can use it as either type of attacker. Also, much like Roaring Moon, it does have a diverse move pool, and with the ability to use either type of attack, you have plenty of options to choose from. Also, it is yet another Pokemon that has access to Wide Guard, which is such an underrated move in this game. But all in all, Iron Valiant could become a Pokemon you could use on a handful of teams. Now, before we do get to number 1, I just want to say if you guys did get this far, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys haven't yet, please make sure to go down and hit the subscribe button. If you guys do enjoy the video, please make sure to drop a like too. It really helps me out a lot and I really appreciate it. But getting into number 1, we have Flutter Mane. As I said, I was debating putting Roaring Moon in this spot, but one of the reasons why Flutter Mane takes the top spot is because of its typing. Now, as a Ghost and Fairy type, it only has 2 weaknesses to Ghost and Steel, and it has a total of 3 immunities and 1 4x resistance. And even though its HP and defense are down at 55, which honestly is ridiculously low, its ability to avoid super effective hits can allow it to stay on the field for a little bit. Plus, if you are facing special attackers, you can tank those moves with a 135 base special defense. And even if you are facing physical attackers, they will have to fear you too, because with a 135 base special attack and speed, you will more than likely outspeed them and be able to hit them hard with plenty of options for special attacks. I mean, you have options like Dazzling Gleam, as well as Shadow Ball, and a move that I think is really underrated, and even though it is a non-stab move, is Mystical Fire. I mean, you also have other options as well, like Power Gem or Dark Pulse or something like that. But basically, you can find a move that'll take down whatever your opponent throws at you. So even though I was just putting moves in here, I think this is actually the moveset that we would end up going with. I mean, the 4th move would end up probably being Protect again. I'm going to end up putting Booster Energy on here. I mean, this is one, again, that only has to be activated by Sun. So if you do have a Sun setter, you can end up putting a different item on it. But again, for Flutter Mane with this, we don't know what team it's going to be on, so I'm going to put the Booster Energy on it to be able to raise its speed or special attack, depending on which one we really want to up. Now, if we were to make it a Terra type, I mean, obviously, we could end up going with Fire. That way, we can end up making Mystical Fire a stab move, which would be really, really nice, because Mystical Fire does also lower the special attack stat of a Pokemon by 1 stage too. However, Flutter Mane is such a strong Pokemon, and Dazzling Gleam is such a great move, and it is a spread move, that I think that we end up having to make it a Fairy type. That way we can get that 2x stab on Dazzling Gleam. When it comes to the EV spread, again, this is one Pokemon that has such a high special attack and speed stat that I think those are the ones we're going to have to max out. And again, because it is such a fast Pokemon, and Flutter Mane is going to be such a used Pokemon, I do believe that we end up having to make it be a timid Pokemon. Because again, we're not going to be using the attack stat, and that speed needs to be up as high as possible. And again, we do have the extra 4 left over. We're going to put that in HP to get that up to 131. So again, we're really taking advantage of that high special attack stat, as well as the high speed stat. And again, making sure that it's timid, as well as having the 252 in the speed, means that it is going to be the fastest Flutter Mane out on the field. At the very least, you are going to end up with a speed tie, and all you can hope is that RNG is going to be in your favor. Also, as something that I alluded to earlier in the video, Flutter Mane is actually a great Pokemon to pair with Iron Bundle, though. Especially with Iron Bundle's ability to slow your Pokemon down with Icy Wind and its high speed stat, that's going to end up going first. You're going to end up getting some speed control on them, lowering their speed a bit, and that way Flutter Mane is going to for sure end up going first. Well, for the most part. Of course, there are other things that might come into play, but for the most part, Flutter Mane will be the fastest one on the field then, aside from Iron Bundle. Again, these two are the fastest Pokemon in the game, so don't be surprised if you see these two together quite often. So that's our list. And I think once we start to see the meta develop, I think this list may change around a little bit, or some of the Pokemon may go up or go down a little bit. But overall, I think these Paradox Pokemon are going to make Series 2 and beyond a lot of fun. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure to go down and drop a like. See you guys next time.